Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. It's great to see so many familiar faces. I'm Carolyn Sreggio. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Development. This is the class of 1971 lunch, so welcome. I'm going to let May introduce herself here in a minute, and she's going to describe the breakout room situation. We have about 90 minutes together, so make sure if you have a moment to change your screen name. Some people are including their maiden names, if that's helpful. Everyone's got their camera on, so we should be good to go. And as a quick housekeeping item, we are recording the session, so probably in about a week or so, we'll post all the videos. So in case you've missed anything or you want to include a classmate who wasn't able to join, we'll send that out. So I'll hand it over to May, and then we'll let Cindy and Michelle take it away. Go ahead, May.
Hi, I'm May Evans. I've seen most of you already today, but I'm the Assistant Director of Stewardship, Reunions, and Research in the Office of Advancement. So we do have breakout rooms set up if you all want to use them, and we have some topics already that your class leadership came up with. We have travel, grandchildren, sections and clubs, sports, arts and music, and anything goes. So if you want, we can open those rooms and you'll be able to either join yourself if you can find the option. It will be at the bottom. It won't be there yet, but it will be at the bottom of your screen. There will either be an option for breakout rooms, or you might have 3 dots or an ellipsis. You can click on that when the time comes and select a room. Or if you don't want to mess with it, if you just hang tight, we can put you in a room. So when the time comes, we can open those if you want. And I'll just turn it over to Cindy and Michelle.
And it's actually Michelle.
I get to host this one. So right now, has everybody who's on this Zoom been on one fairly recently, like was on the one last night? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think because we wanted to make sure anybody who comes on that we haven't yet seen, that we make sure that we allow them a chance to fill us in on what they've been doing in forever. I guess 50 years, not quite forever. Did you have something you wanted to say, Steve? Or were you?
Well, I was on the memorial one, but not the one last night.
All right. Well, let's start with you then. And you can.
Thanks.
And you can fill us in on what you've been doing since 1971.
Since 71. Okay.
Well, whatever you want to say is fine.
Okay. I went to Duke for 3 years, got my Master's of Science in Physics, then went to the Naval Research Lab and worked there for 39 years, from which I retired in November of 2013. So I've been retired 7 years, 8 years, get 7.5 years. Got married 1980. 2 kids came in 88 and 91, both of which are Worcester alumni. So I get credit for that. I had to wrangle my daughter into at least applying, and she did it. And then when she got accepted, she had to go visit, and that convinced her. So she didn't want to admit it to Daddy when she got home. She double majored, they both double majored in math and chemistry, and my son in math and physics. My daughter went to work for a few years and then went back to school at University of Maryland, got her PhD in environmental chemistry, and is now working at Goddard Space Flight Center. My son got interested in computers rather late in the game. He did say it was a regret not doing a computer science physics double major, but he didn't discover computers until his junior IS, I think. And so he's now in Madison, Wisconsin, doing working for Data Assembly. He did work for the courts program for a long time, but he's now working for that, doing very well, thank you, as near as I can tell, though I haven't checked on him. He just started that job a few weeks ago. And then my wife and I, well, we've been active in church and just about every job there is at church, except I don't think either of us has been a deacon. I'm church treasurer right now, so that's, you know, and been clerk a couple of times, Presbyterian church.
Yeah.
And other than that, we're waiting for the cruises to open up back so we could go back to cruising. So that's what we've been doing. So.
Okay.
I'm curious, Steve, what your work was. What was the most interesting work you had for the Navy?
I did ambient noise the whole time. Now, ambient noise is the background against which you detect submarines. So I was also in sort of submarine detection via the back door, as it were. Array performance in ambient noise fields. You know, can you see between ships to find the sub? That sort of thing. And then I got involved in a lot of special projects towards the end of my career where I was, okay, now we're doing spooky stuff, which I can't talk about even now. And then there was working working with the chemistry division to do things like fire detection. And while acoustics is a lousy way to detect a fire, it's a good way to detect interfering sources like grinding and things like that, things that are noisy. Pipe ruptures was what initially got me into that. And you know, a pipe rupture is generally loud, so there's no problem. It's just a case of identifying which noise you are, and that's surprisingly hard, actually. But so I got into a little bit of pattern recognition, sort of mathematics and things like that. So
My dad was a sonarman third class in World War II on a destroyer escort.
Steve, where is the Naval Research Lab?
Washington, D.C. It's, you come up at the southern tip of DC is Blue Plains, the sewage treatment plant. The next one up is Naval Research Lab, and then it's Bowling Air Force Base, which is a housing and offices now. There's no landing there. And then the Navy Yard where the president's helicopters are. So, yeah, it was a bit of a commute from Great Falls. I live in Great Falls now.
That's a good place to live.
I have 2 acres of woods and trees. It's nice. The cicadas were loud this year, but not as bad as other years. So, and right now because we're getting rain, they're nothing at all. But a lot of dead bodies, you know, being careful to step on them, not step on them.
Yeah, they don't live too long.
No, they'll be gone by, if not this weekend, next weekend.
We had them here in Columbus. If any of you watched the Memorial golf tournament, you could hear them in the background. We didn't have any in our neighborhood, but I guess they were at the memorial the last time the 17 years ago or whenever they were out. So anybody else have anything they wanted to add from before, or say hi to anyone? I mean, we could consider breakout rooms or I mean, we still don't have, we have what, 20 right now.
Mickey, I don't think Jim Lowery spoke last time, did he?
Or Faith.
Or
Or
Faith?
Susan
Oh.
O'Donnell. I don't think.
I see, and I wasn't sure who had, because I had to leave an hour early last night. So that would be great. All right, Jim, did you?
Have been requested to speak for those up north, like in Montana.
Yeah.
Others of you, I stayed muted because I had spoken. The committee, we did a lot of speaking, which it's been a lot of fun working with the committee, all of you. But I'm now in Mississippi, have been here since 1980. Got married in 82, have 4 kids from the age range of 29 to 37. Unfortunately, one is in New York City, one is in Rochester, New York. The one in New Orleans is accessible. We have not seen most of our kids since December of 19. So that's been a drag. The 4th kid is here, so we do get to see him. But they're all doing well. You know, when I met all of you, I was in Alabama, and I stayed there until I found a job when they asked me to move to Mississippi. And I've been here ever since, married a local girl, so I'm stuck.
The accent sounds the same.
It was different. We were talking about Pat Reed's accent, I guess, last night. And yeah, I was noticeable then. And then somebody found a bumper sticker to put on my dorm room in Armington that said, when Lurleen Wallace was elected, that said the governor of Alabama is a mother. And they were very right. I knew her daughter. And I think the funniest part about when she was elected is she didn't do everything George told her to do until she died, which got him out of office when she died. Unfortunately, we lost her during office. But I don't know who put that on my door, but I thought it was quite appropriate. I hadn't gotten to know Peggy because we were same age, you know, we graduated the same year in high school.
How about that?
Where are you in Mississippi?
Jackson.
Hmm.
Actually, right now I'm sitting on the county line. I'm not right on the edge of Ridgeland. I actually work with the Ridgeland Chamber of Commerce as a volunteer in addition to running my store. And it's across the street. And the mayor, you know, the one thing I'll tell all of you, you know, like we're talking about careers, you know, the career thing they have now, join the local Chamber of Commerce, not the big city one. I joined the suburb one, and it's been very, you know, I mean, Ridgeland's got 25,000 people and 900 members in their Chamber of Commerce.
Wow.
Ooh.
And it's very active, and it's been very beneficial as far as the networking. So it's my word of wise for, you know, for those of you still working. I know most of you aren't. I just enjoy what I'm doing.
So what is your store?
I am a FedEx ship center and I guess that's what is termed a quick copy shop. I have a large copier that I can do a lot of projects on. And then, you know, I represent FedEx and to some degree UPS as a shipping location to bring your packages, and we can pack and ship them, or we can just ship them for you. People bring them by with the label on them, and you know, with FedEx, I actually get a little money for taking it across the counter and putting it in the outbox.
Well, I'll say since Buck had a small business, his was manufacturing, and he did manage fortunately, very fortunately, to sell it before he passed away. But I have followed sort of in a big picture way the tales of small businesses during COVID, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking because I know what goes into it and what it demands of the family. So I'm just glad to see that you're still operating at this point.
Here, thanks to a good manager who had to leave me this afternoon. She had an appointment, but she kept it running. She basically, when it hit back March of last year, she said, go home. She just brought her lunch because, you know, it wasn't very busy for about, 3 months, to the point that I got rent relief from my shopping center owner. but we made it because we were FedEx and UPS drop point. We were deemed essential, so we stayed open barely, but we did, and things are coming back to normal.
I guess I'm a little surprised that you didn't have a pickup in business, because I thought the shipping business was the one business that did have a pickup.
It did, but it was all the big stuff. It wasn't mom and dad bringing their package. It was, it's like my FedEx drivers are worn out, and what that was back when the vaccine started flowing, FedEx was carrying most of it.
Oh, wow.
And they were literally having, they don't get a FedEx plane here because we're 3 hours from Memphis, but I mean, the truck would come down full of vaccine to be parceled all over the state of Mississippi. And I mean, FedEx, UPS to some degree, but mainly FedEx was the main distributor for the vaccines that we got here. But it didn't do that. Now, some people, and then when people are ordering from, say, Amazon, we don't see anything out of it until they send it back.
That's true.
Okay, that's right. It's all packages going to people from the stores.
From big companies.
Not
even I was at it
mailing.
I don't know if any of you have a Bed Bath and Beyond in your area. I was at the one near here closed, and I went to the next one in another suburb and was just talking with the manager from the one here. He says, I don't know how long we'll stay open. Everybody last March went to ordering online. Bed Bath and Beyond is fine, but the individual stores and the employees at those stores are not.
Are having trouble. Faith, did you not have a chance to speak last evening? Okay. You know what? We can't hear you.
She's muted.
I don't think she's muted. It might, maybe she is. Yes, you are muted. You're right.
Okay.
There you are.
So after Worcester, I worked for a couple years, and then I went to law school here in Washington, and went directly from there to the Justice Department, where I worked as a litigator for about 8 years, trying civil cases, defending the United States for the most part. I kind of developed a specialty in medical malpractice defense work. And after my second child was born, I could not handle the travel, because all my cases, like other attorneys there, were somewhere else. They weren't here. They were Seattle or San Juan or Danville, Illinois, or San Angelo, Texas. It was just too much. So I went to the Office of Legislative Affairs, primarily because it didn't involve going to any airports. And that was my primary criteria at that point. And I kind of didn't know anything about Congress. I had no idea where the Rayburn building was or what it was. And over the course of the following 31 years, I became the senior career attorney in that office, specializing a lot in congressional oversight work, which is really where the rubber meets the road in terms of the separation of powers between the legislative branch and the executive branch. And it was really fun. It was a lot of problem solving. It was really stressful. But I think I thrived on that. I got a lot of energy out of being on the spot. And it worked out really well. I was the head of the office 3 times during transitions. And then I left in July of 2017, having served there 41 years, so that my husband and I could do more traveling. We liked to travel. And we've done a lot of that, but he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the spring of 2018 and died in July. Our 2 children are grown and married, and our daughter lives in Bethesda. Our son and his wife live on Capitol Hill. I have 3 grandchildren under 3, and they are delightful, and they are my main sustenance. During the pandemic here, the kids said, if you want to see us or your grandchildren, you can't see anybody else. Nobody else can come into the house. You can't go to anybody else's house. Well, that took me about a nanosecond to decide that I would, hole up here alone. And it's been fine. It's been fine. I've really enjoyed them and reckoned with the fact that I'm an appendage to their lives now, but they're still central to mine. And that's okay. So the biggest chore, of course, is coping with the loss of my husband, as I know some of you have also experienced, and trying to kind of reinvent myself apart from him. That's been much harder than leaving DOJ. I loved it, but I'm glad to that's behind me, and I don't intend to go back. I'm active in National Presbyterian Church. I coordinate weddings there and head sacraments, and generally try to be helpful generally when I can be, not just there, but elsewhere. So that's my life in a nutshell.
Thank you. I actually, even though Faith and I have been on the committee, there was stuff in there that I didn't know. So I didn't have some of the details. So it's always fun to have a chance to get back together and catch up.
Faith, I told everybody I didn't come to the memorial service because my internet, the minute I punched up the email to get the Zoom link, I realized my internet service was gone. So I'm going to find your recording somehow, some way. Maybe you can help me find it.
I think the college is going to post it at some point. Yeah, so you'll have access to it at your convenience once it's up.
Yep.
So I have to ask you too, did you, because I think at one point I looked up your address or something. So did you go to AU for law? Where'd you go for law school?
I went to Antioch, which was related to Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. I lived near.
Where's it back?
I'm sorry?
The colleges went under at one point.
Yeah, and the law school no longer exists, although it was fortunately accredited at the time I went. And I live near American University here in DC. You could throw a stone to AU buildings from my front porch.
Because my stepmother, because I grew up in Bethesda, if you just head all the way out Mass Avenue until it dead ends. And my stepmother lived on Tilden Street. So we were on either side of my favorite store, which Garfinkel's, which is no longer.
Yeah.
How about that? Let's see, a couple more. Susan, do you go by Susie still or not? Oh, you're muted.
Oh, for Worcester friends, I'll answer to Susie.
Okay. Anyway, I don't think that I certainly haven't heard from you, and I think maybe you didn't have a chance to catch us up either. So.
Oh, I'm sorry I missed everything last night. I bet
okay.
it was great.
It's great to see you today.
It's so much fun to see everybody. I hate to follow Faith. My word, Faith. You're a tough act to follow. But let's see, in a nutshell, after Worcester, I worked in publishing for about 5 years at Lippincott and then Little Brown. And that was fascinating. I loved that. And then I ended up having 2 boys, 2 little children. And so I took a time off for my career. But during being a mom, I started painting. And that ended up to be my next career. So I am now a portrait artist and I paint horses. So that all evolved over time. And at one point, I had a kidney transplant since our last reunion. My sister gave me a kidney. So I have a whole new life, which is amazing. And the hamburgers probably know all about what I went through. Let's see, and since then, I've kept up with a few Worcester friends. Oh, I should mention that I was remarried in 2000, and Tom Sheffield, who's a little older than we were, did
Right.
the wedding.
Oh,
Michelle can picture it because we went to the same church together.
yeah.
And let's see. Then, oh, I see Sandy Cope from our class comes to New York a lot, so I get to see her every once in a while. And I see Crinkle Eccles Hooker and Pam Young Wolf and Dave, and oh, of course, Bill Hooker too, and Julie Wood. Somehow our lives have really overlapped a lot. So I still keep in touch with a lot of Worcester friends. And I think that's all I have to report.
Well, that's great. Some of those people, I thought were going to join us, and they still. I mean, the reunion's not over, so they may have. But I know Crinkle and well, just a whole Julie, and I forget who else you mentioned. But yeah,
it turns out Julie's niece is getting married this weekend, so she really wants to be at the reunion, but she's pulled in a lot of directions because she's having a lot of family at her house. And Crinkle's actually picking up her daughter's RV out in Utah. So she was going to try to make some room and get a Wi-Fi connection or something, but I don't know if that's going to work for her.
That's going to work. Well, just make sure if we don't see them, I mean, and I should write to them too, but, and Sandy, that we all get together next year on campus. That's my push for everybody who's here is don't say, okay, well, we saw everybody last year. I mean, because we have, but it's just not the same. And we just want to have, as Cindy said, next year, we're not thinking about raising funds. We do want to have a tree planted for our class, but other than that, we just want to get together. We will have an in-person memorial service. And so if you have pictures, I think most of you heard me say that during right before this, but we're going to try to do that and maybe have some live music. And so think about what you all would like to do, and we can talk more about that even tomorrow. But
Hugs will be available, right?
What?
Hugs will be available.
Hugs will be available. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Nikki, I wanted to ask Susie a question.
Go right ahead.
Hi,
Susie. I'm trying to remember, was it I know we didn't get to the 45th reunion because Ned was sick then, but the 40th reunion.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask anybody else who's on this Zoom if they remember the same thing that I do. There was some activity to literally take over the Holden Lounge, and a whole bunch of us went over there. I think we had takeout food.
Yes.
And then it was, I don't even know what the program, there was no program, but I can remember, Susie, sitting with you, maybe Linda, you were there as well.
I was.
Just laughing like maniacs. I don't know, do you guys remember that, or am I like delusional in my old age?
No. We got kicked out of the space.
We did, we got thrown out. You're right. We got thrown out of the Holden Lounge.
Well,
did you really?
I do remember that, and I do remember what happened.
Okay.
that you got thrown out. See, now what I remember is the 45th, and it was I think that was Compton Lounge,
right?
When we all got together. But it must not have been nearly as raucous as the 40th. I was at the 40th, I think, but I don't think we were staying on campus. So anyway.
Trisha was the house mother there at the time. And
there was no one there. You know, I think, Diane, what happened is we were looking for a place where we could bring takeout food because we didn't want to eat in the student center. We didn't want to sit at a official dinner. So somebody ordered a bunch of takeout stuff, went down and got it. And then we needed a place to eat it. And we roamed around and tried to get somebody to give us permission to go into the Holden Lounge. And that's where we landed with the food. And then I can't remember what set us off, but boy, I do remember that. That was hilarious.
So what happened was that in the Holden Lounge, there were probably, at least 20 women, because of course Holden had been the women's dorm. And so David had come, my second husband had come to the reunion with me. And he was dying to meet all these people that I've been talking about. And this was his big opportunity. So we went into the Holden Lounge and it was set up, Trish and Ned and everybody eating Chinese or whatever the takeout was, were at one end, as I recall, or at least maybe even in a different room. But there were two big sofas facing each other. And of course, everybody, 20 women and David. And so and we were all kind of quiet, and the conversation was really kind of slow and quiet. And all of a sudden, David starts singing. It's on Sesame Street, I think. One of these things is not like the other. If anybody has a good voice, you can help me sing it.
You know the song?
Yeah.
I know the song.
And that just brought the place down. And he did it in the most quiet little way. And we just all started, it just hit a nerve. Mm-hmm. It was a timing kind of a thing. And then Ned and Trish came in and everybody came in and it became a very big raucous event. So that's my memory.
So I've made the mistake at every reunion, not only of having myself or allowing myself to be elected head of class, but I also always came back to my home in Akron instead of staying on campus. So I missed all these memory sharing events that have obviously created memories of their own. I am so envious of the rest of you.
Okay, next year.
I know, I'm selling the house.
Yeah, so you'll have to stay with it.
Yeah, because otherwise it's a hell of a commute to St. Augustine.
Yeah, I don't think you'll be doing that.
No, that's 13 and a half hours steady driving. So yeah.
Right.
So who threw you out?
Oh, who threw it?
Now that I don't remember.
I can't remember.
Chancellor, do you remember?
No, but I do remember, and I thought it had something to do with alcohol.
It
was not permitted.
There usually aren't many rules during alumni weekend, so you must have done something really crazy.
Really, yeah.
Well, and alcohol was permitted starting our junior year, as long as you were drinking age.
Maybe they thought we weren't. I don't know.
At your 40th, hey, that would be okay. You'd probably all like that.
I mean, it boggles the mind that somebody would throw somebody out in their 60s, a bunch of people in their 60s out.
Especially when they're donors.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, it's called do the math.
So it's not going to be one of the students. They're not there for the most part.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened.
Go ahead.
Speaking of Holden, does anybody want to share some like freshman year memories or stories about living in Holden?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
I personally think the Canarden stories are more interesting.
Well, except the panty raid that was actually led by Dean King. Remember that one?
You know, he came to Michigan and announced the football games.
I know, and he still did that lame joke about a partial score from Slippery Rock 17.
Does anyone recognize the person that did this? And I don't think it was a person who was in our freshman class in Canarden, but what I remember hearing was a story of somebody perhaps in a class before ours who had a father who was involved with, I don't know, some company that produced gelatin. And he had when the Christmas break was, he had gone into another person's room and somehow lined that person's room with plastic and filled the plastic with water and put gelatin in it and opened the windows so that when the person came back from winter break, he could not get into his own room because the gelatin had set, and he tried to push the door open and he couldn't because the gelatin resisted the pushing of the door open. And I have no idea how he eventually got in or how they remedied the situation, but I just remember hearing that story. Does anyone else remember that story at all?
Not I. No.
Are you sure it wasn't a dream?
No, it wasn't. It must have been somebody in a class, a year or two or three before ours, because I remember hearing the story and I thought, well, I mean, I could believe it because I could believe that somebody was the son of somebody who owned a gelatin company.
Hey, if the clock on Cout can have Mickey Mouse hands on it, why not gelatin in a Carnarvon room?
Yeah. The one thing that while we were there, the Memorial Chapel was torn down and the McGaw Chapel was built. And when Dr. Gore got into the McGaw Chapel with all the Holt Camp refurbished organ and everything, he was trying to sense the acoustic, and he basically said the acoustic was horrific for any kind of music making in it, and he was never happy with it. And I just wonder if since then, I know they did a lot of stuff to try to change the acoustic of McGaw Chapel, but has anyone ever promoted the idea of tearing it down and building an acoustically better facility?
I think that's been proposed by a lot of people, but it would be an expensive proposition, and the college needs the money for a lot of other things rather than destroying a building. And then I think everybody agrees that it's pretty much a monstrosity, but
as an acoustician, let me interject here that there is a basic problem trying to build a building that is good for public speaking and one that is good for music, and in particular organ music. In music and organ music, you want reverberation time. In public speaking, you want it dead so that you can hear. So doing the two is hard. And
McGaw happens to be unique in the fact that it does neither.
Yes.
well, that's a particularly bad situation.
That's a particularly bad. Well, I do think that we have heard they are considering, what is it called, decommissioning it. So it is that correct, Carolyn? Do you know?
We don't have plans to decommission it, but we actually have a really phenomenal new chief marketing officer, communications and marketing officer, and she is in the process of contracting with some sound experts, because we do still need the space for large lectures, convocation. So we do use it, throughout the year for significant events. So they do have plans to try to create some solutions, but I think to Steve's point, there are some structural issues that will probably never make it perfect, but there are plans to try to improve it.
You could certainly make it better by putting deadening around the back walls and up top, and then sound reinforcing systems in, speakers basically. But yeah, it's going to take some work, and it'll never be as great as if it had been properly designed.
Right.
Interestingly, when I moved to Northwestern, Foster McGaw built a chapel, the Alice Millar Chapel on Northwestern's campus, which is a wonderful facility for performances. And I'm guessing it's too boomy for really good speaking acoustic, but nevertheless, they have worship services in there regularly. But I've sung in it in various concerts with the Northwestern Concert Choir, and it's a beautiful acoustic for performances like that.
Before we go on, I had another comment about that, but has everybody else had a chance to, I know Don, last night you passed. Don DeWald, do you want to say anything?
Yeah.
Today?
Well, yeah, you have a new audience in good part.
Yes.
Okay. Nutshell, 25 words or less.
Should I count?
Yeah. So the medical school residency, all in Ohio, came back to hometown, built up a practice, built up basically a big enough practice that Cleveland Clinic wanted it. And I have 3 boys. They're on both coasts. Nick is in Napa. He's a project manager for a concrete company. I have a major in the Marine Corps. He's at the Annapolis right now, going back to Lejeune. And my 3rd son is a pulmonary critical care specialist that just finished going through the Boston epidemic and learned a lot, there. And 3 grandchildren with a 4th on the way. And I'm retired in 2018 and maintaining a Skyline Chili restaurant franchise. And boy, did we have problems last year with the pandemic and being shut down and learning about PPP loans and all that stuff. But we came through it, and we're still running very well. So that's what I'm doing.
Thank you. Sounds good. Now, is there anybody else who hasn't, since I was off for an hour last night?
I haven't really shared my story except
Well,
with the committee. I've been making sure we got everybody else's stories out there.
Okay.
Well, we saved the best for last, I'm sure.
Huh?
Bring it.
Oh, no, not best, just different, just different. Most of you know, I started going to summer sessions at the University of Idaho when my parents, who had become teachers as their 3rd and final careers each, started taking summer study fellowships around the country. Dad got a program to go to Idaho for 3 summers to do full masters. I was dragged kicking and screaming to Idaho the 2nd summer. Funny how the screaming and kicking ended about 5 weeks into the summer session when a guy who was in one of my political science classes became my boyfriend. And so I transferred from Worcester at the end of or in the middle of that summer after my 2nd year, met with the registrar, found what courses would not translate, so would not give me credit, and discovered that instead of being a true 1st semester junior, I was 4 hours shy of being a senior. But if I had transferred, in fact, I would have ended up not even having completed my sophomore year, just because there weren't matching courses. So I untransferred, returned from my 3rd and last year. I knew I wanted to go to law school. I knew I wanted to go back to Idaho, to George. And so I put the spurs to it and did my junior IS and my senior IS in 1 year, which is basically why I really don't know you guys anymore. I had a perfectly normal freshman year, modestly normal sophomore year. 3rd year was a blur, and it was all academics. So unfortunately, of course, I got into the law school, which was the only one I applied to, subject to finishing my summer studies and my degree. Nothing like taking 18 semester hours in a summer session, but I did it. And of course, George and I broke up. So I went to the University of Idaho and graduated there in 73. I had the first internship ever given to a woman law student was at Boise Cascade Corporation the summer after my 2nd year. I knew right then and there that I wanted to be a corporate lawyer, and I wanted to be a corporate lawyer in a company that did business worldwide like Boise Cascade. Unfortunately, there were only 2 such companies in Idaho, and the deal was I would have to practice 5 years to be eligible to be hired for either one. And back in those days, the most law firms were partnerships. And even though the civil rights laws have been passed, law firms would say, absolutely convinced that they were immune from any legal repercussions, we are not going to take a chance on you because you're a woman. And I did not have any connections to the law industry anywhere through family. So I took the crap job in the state of Idaho, even though I was 10th in my class and I wrote the top bar exam. But it got me into court on day one. Within 1 year, I was being recruited as a trial lawyer by the same law firms that had said to me before. But I got, there's a backstory that I won't trouble you with, but in 1974, I was one of 3 women anywhere in the US elected as their county attorney. So I was a prosecuting attorney at the ripe old age of 24 and not even 2.5 years out of law school. My father was still in Ohio, still teaching. He had advanced MS and unfortunately had some problems with embolisms. I was visiting him in Ohio, met a family friend who said, I will take you to lunch, get you out of the hospital. Went down to Goodyear. 2 weeks later, I'm back in Idaho and I get a phone call from one of the gentlemen I met that day saying, we'd like you to come back for a second interview. And I literally told him, I'm sorry, I didn't know I had the first one. I did get the job. I became the first woman attorney in the rubber industry in the world. I stayed with it for 30 years. I was retired in 2004 at the ripe old age of 54. And I've been doing volunteer work ever since and never have practiced law again. And I don't miss it. The profession as I knew it has changed so radically. Yeah, I'm one of those who, if I knew then what we face now, I would never have become a lawyer. Don't know what I would have become instead. So I've been in Akron all this time since moving back from Idaho until 3 years ago. And I decided I was going to try living somewhere I didn't know anybody. And so I test drove St. Augustine and it stuck. So I've been there for 3 years. And now I'm selling my Akron, Ohio house. Anyway, so that's it. Never married, never had kids. But as a scholarship brat from the time I was in 9th grade in my prep school, I have put other kids, other families' kids through prep school, college, and law school. And that's why I do fundraising, because I was a recipient.
Which is a great thing. I mean, to think about, if you had scholarship, which many of us did at Worcester, if you haven't already, but I think almost all of us have, but I like that thought as a fundraising, you know, try to give back what you were given.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, anybody else want to have anything they want to say in particular, or we could go back to just memories of things that happened while we were on campus, which is also good, or ideas about what you might want to do, like have a big bash at Holden Lounge, or whatever.
Vicki, I guess I'd like to make the observation that in this small group of people, there are 3 women, me, Cindy, and Faith, all of whom are lawyers at a time when going to law school was incredibly rare. Now, I didn't go directly from Worcester, but when I walked into Harvard Law School 6 years later, in a class of 600, there were only a third of them were women, and at 26 or 27, I was I was the 4th oldest woman in that class of 600. So it was a rare time to be in that professional track. I didn't have the commitment to the law and to trial work that Faith and Cindy did, but and did a lot of different things with a law degree. but it's just an interesting observation of a 50-year class with this few people on the screen that was where 3 of us landed and had very different career paths. So I share that.
I'll share one other memory that predates our graduation. Because I was applying to law school, I of course had to take the LSAT. And so I took it a year before most of you would have even considered it. The group that got a van ride up from Worcester to the University of Akron School of Law, which is where the exam was, we were seated for the exam. We were the only people the Worcester students were the only ones in the room who were all kids. Akron U didn't require LSAT for admission, but strangely enough, it required it for graduation. So there were law students sitting for the exam. But of the people in the room, every woman, every person of color was a College of Worcester student. Nobody else. All of the others were white male. And it was like that in law school. I understand law schools in the East were a lot more progressive than those in the West. The class proportions were a little closer to where they are now in the East. But boy, we had a class, ours was the largest class entering 75, 5 of us women. One left after year 1 and went a completely different path. 4 of us graduated. A number of years ago, the Idaho State Bar commissioned a book called its booklet called The First 50 Women. It took the state of Idaho over 100 years of statehood before it admitted its 50th woman. I'm number 43.
Wow.
That's weird.
Cindy,
Well, I can share a funny, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Actually, Faith, you and Cindy and who just spoke? Trisha. Yeah. Having been in law, one of the things that I've been following recently, sparked by a TED talk by a prosecuting attorney, was the fact that prosecuting attorneys are perhaps the most powerful attorney or law officials in court. And you normally think the judge is the most powerful, but the prosecuting attorney decides what cases to take, how to prosecute them, what even to recommend as sentences and this kind of thing. And more they're saying, is there a way we can keep people from going to jail, especially if they're first offenders of that, and avoid sort of starting up this process of their continuing to go to jail, come out, reoffend, go back in. So did you have, particularly Cindy, a sense that when you were prosecuting an attorney that you had some flexibility, or was there even any concept like that?
Oh yeah, very definitely. Idaho was one of the early states to try diversion programs, especially for youth offenders. What wasn't a factor then, and probably didn't become a factor until, I'm going to guess, the 90s, and obviously much more effect since then, is minimum sentencing, which was never a factor. And minimum sentence, especially at the federal level, is what is turned, I think the justice system is turned into a jail industry. And I think that is much to our shame as a nation.
I think that was a common criticism during the crack cocaine, in connection with crack cocaine prosecutions. But I think that a lot of that has been changed, and I think judges generally have a fair amount of latitude to go outside of what's called now the sentencing guidelines. So they have a lot more discretion that they might not have had earlier. I just wanted to tell a little vignette off what Tricia was saying about women going to law school in the time frame. we did. When I left Worcester, I got a job as an administrative assistant at Yale Law School, working in a state department funded program for research in developing countries, legal systems. And of course, I was in the same class as most of the first year students because I had just finished at Worcester. And after about a year, I had thought about going to law school, but I don't know, I was kind of intimidated by it. There's, as we've said, there weren't very many women who did that then. And, but after a year of socializing with my colleagues who were first year law students at Yale, I kind of woke up one morning and I thought, these guys aren't that much smarter than me. I think I could do this. I could give this a shot, right? And of course, it was all guys. It was all men there. And when I broached this topic with the professor who headed the program at that time, he said, well, Faith, I think you would be a really good social worker. How about if you go become a social worker? I think you would do a great job. And I just thought, okay, check that box. I'm not going to do that. And I realized he was not going to be very helpful. But somehow I barreled through. But again, it was a similar situation for me as for the two of you, Cindy and Tricia, in the sense that, for a woman to try to go to law school at that time was just like walking a plank, because you didn't know how you would do, or I didn't anyway, or what would be on the other end, let alone how you would pay for it. And, at the end of the day, it was just the most fun in the world for me. But I don't know if I'd have been a good social worker. You never know.
All I know is I thank God for Kent Weeks of the political science department, because as a liberal arts student, I was destined to be a chemistry major, because my goal was to be a polymer chemist, like my dad should have been, but he was both chemist and physicist for Firestone. But Kent, I was forced to take a social sciences course, so I signed up for his constitutional law course. And I liked it enough, I took the next one he offered. So when I derailed in chemistry and ended up in poli-sci, little did I know until the first week of law school that I had been taught in the Socratic method, the law school method that was used everywhere. None of my classmates had been. So law school was easy, thanks to Worcester.
I have a question for Carolyn. When I went there, the first young lady came up a class or two behind me, and the professor said she was the first woman in 40 or 50 years in physics. I was in physics. And chemistry always had a large number of women, even when I was there. So the question is there still a dichotomy? Because physics has always had a problem with not enough women. They are, at the time, they were certainly rare. So the question is, what is the statistics now?
I'll have to look in my notes, but there is definitely a better balance these days in all of our STEM fields. So not only gender balance, but all sorts of diversity balance, but it's one that we continue to work on. So I don't know the physics numbers off the top of my head, but I can try to look them up and circle back. It certainly helps having a president who represents the field, and that's obviously a wonderful example.
Well, understand there were only 4 physics majors, so in my class. So
yeah.
What Faith was saying earlier reminded me of a senior pastor that I worked with back 20 years ago, who said that when she told her youth group director in church that she, at age 15, felt like she was being called to ordain minister, her youth pastor said to her, "I don't think you're being called to be a pastor. I think maybe you're being called to be a pastor's wife." Well, she kind of took that, that put a wet blanket on her hopes, but she married, she had 2 daughters. But when the daughters were old enough, she realized that, yes, she was called to be a pastor. She went to seminary, she graduated, she had a successful career in the ministry. And it was like, screw that youth director for telling me what he did when I was 15. Not that she said, she didn't use those terms, but that was basically the sense of it.
I have to just throw a funny story in that connects both Steve and Doug here. As many of you know, if you if you heard me last night, I've been on a search committee for a rector for our church, and some of the resumes that we have gotten have been really interesting because they have been women who have dual degrees, one of them being physics. So I thought that was, I was just really surprised about that. And so when you were talking about those, I thought, oh, okay. So anyway.
Hey, guess who just snuck in? That was Steve Griffin, wasn't it?
Oh, Steve?
He just stepped away.
Okay.
But I think that's who that is.
That's Steve.
Can
you read the bridge?
I've been nagging. Yeah. Now he'll come back.
Okay. Well, when he comes back, we'll catch up with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where he went.
He's obviously somewhere in a kitchen or somewhere. If there were.
He's been a school administrator in Worcester, hasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe he got a phone call or something. Who knows?
Can I interrupt?
Steve Griffin is
Yeah, I
still at
have to
Worcester?
say hello and goodbye.
Oh, Pat.
My 12 o'clock meeting went late, and I have to leave in about 10 minutes to go to a 2 o'clock meeting.
Okay, are we going to see you tomorrow then?
Yes, we will. I'll be there for the alumni meeting. Yes.
Okay, and possibly tomorrow night?
Yes, tomorrow night's a definite. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Hey, Steve.
Sorry I couldn't stay and talk with everyone, but
well, we'll
other
do that tomorrow.
commitments. Yes.
We'll do that tomorrow.
Okay. Thank
See
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So Steve,
What?
this what? So we've been filling everybody else in on what we've been doing. You want to fill us in?
Well, sure. I'm late and I had to go change my shirt. I figured you guys were looking at me in my t-shirt and work pants. So yeah, great. Let's see. I don't do this very well. I don't Zoom a whole lot. So I suppose I look at the camera. Is that how it works? Okay, I'm looking at the camera, but then I can't see the screen. So, all right. Well, hey, I'm retired, probably like most everybody else, enjoying it well. My wife is still alive, which is great because we've had a few close calls, and she's presently visiting with her daughter in Akron, and I am here just wrapping up lunch. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, I said, wait a minute, there was a lunch thing somewhere because I already missed the memorial and yesterday too. So I'm helping my son. He's trying to get his house ready for sale. And so I've been up to my eyeballs working there. And other than that, life is pretty good. No COVID. That was great. We isolated like everybody else for however long it was. And got piles of grandkids. I don't know, about 11 or 12 at this last count. And they're all over the place: Massachusetts, North Carolina, Arizona, Ohio, Columbus. Yeah, so there you are. What else? Second marriage, 8 kids. And as I said, a whole pile of grandkids. There we are.
Steve, this is Ron Hamburger.
Hey, Ron Hamburger.
Long time since we saw each other.
Very long.
Rundown of your life since 1971.
My life? Well, it would be very difficult for you to believe, Ron, but I ended up being a teacher and a school principal for 30 years. You would believe this. I was very good at school discipline, so I ended up, I got into special education after the volunteer program I was involved in at the college. We had an Apple Creek Cub Scout unit with the handicap there, and that kind of cascaded into lots of things, but basically special ed. And then I was in a special needs school for 15 years at Boys Village, I loved it. It was great. It was a residential school, but we took all the behavior problems from all the surrounding districts. They loved us. Oh, that's it. If you're talking about after that, short stint as an executive director for housing, short-term housing for the homeless. Heavily involved in United Way, social service efforts over the years, 26 years in United Way. So I guess my interests always were more humanitarian than anything else. So that's it.
Great, great.
You bet. And as I say, I'm sorry I missed everybody else's story. It kind of bums me out.
everything's been taped. So, and the college will make them all available. So you can just look at all of our faces and listen.
Oh, good.
when you find you have extra time and
yeah, all right.
to do.
That's fine. I will find the time for sure. It's great to see everybody. This really is kind of difficult, isn't it, with this remote reunion? I mean, this is tough stuff.
It's not the same as a face-to-face reunion, but we're planning that for next year.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And let's just pray we're all still vertical. What do you think?
I think that sounds good. I think that sounds
at the grass from the green side.
There you go. Yeah.
So let's see, who haven't we heard? I know that we've heard, I see about 4 people that in this session haven't said anything. Don Kovacs and Marjorie and Linda. And I don't know, listeners, did you say anything?
I don't think we heard from Diane since she joined us late yesterday.
Oh, that's right, Diane.
That's right.
That is true. So we'll start with you.
I didn't tell my story.
Just that we got married, basically. So we didn't date till second semester senior year and then got married a year later.
So the funny thing about that is we went to a movie and Ron likes to tell the story, you know, what movie? The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Boy, there's a rom-com for you.
In the basement of the tear, right? We didn't even go downtown. But anyway, when I went to Worcester, I had every intention of being a French major, getting a teaching certificate and teaching French. That didn't work out very well. I'll keep it short. When I went to declare my major, so that was like what, the middle of your sophomore year or something, the head of the French department came in and said, "You're not going to make it."
Who is that? Beal
or Miss Greg? She said, "You have 3 choices. You can fail. You can, well, you have 4 choices.
But
you can fail.
You couldn't speak it.
Well, I couldn't speak it. I could read it and write it just perfectly, but I couldn't speak it for anything. She says it can't be fixed unless you go backwards and you take some earlier classes and learn to speak it, or you spend the summer with a tutor or whatever, but it's not going to work otherwise. Or you could just choose a different major." So I majored in biology. I had all that math and all that science and all that everything. So I became a bio major, and I did my junior and my senior IS with Dr. Hinton, who was the genetics professor. And I had my teaching certificate. And in Ohio, they had an interesting little certificate that allowed you to teach any math and any science if you'd had enough courses across that curriculum in any school in Ohio from 8th grade through senior high school. So I got a job teaching in a suburb of Dayton, Ohio. And after 1 year decided that wasn't what I wanted to do either. So we got married, moved to Chicago, and I literally took my IS with me to an interview at the Quaker Oats Company. We had was looking for a technical writer, and I was hired on the basis of my IS. I worked for Quaker for 7 years. It was a small industrial chemical that had a funky little 5 carbon ring stuff they made from leftover cereal, like oat hulls and stuff like that. And it was a specialty that was used in all kinds of funky applications all over the world. So I became their technical writer and their advertising person, got involved with technical advertising agencies, and got spirited away to a much larger global company. If any of you work in industry, you might have heard of Nalco. And they had chemical applications, specialty chemical applications in almost any and every industrial process that there is. So I became I led their global efforts in market and technical communications until I retired. So that's how I went from French to engineering. I certainly never had an engineering class, but by the time I got done working with Nalco, I probably knew more about engineering and industrial applications because I had to write about it, and I had to edit and teach people how to write and edit about it all over the world. When I retired, Nalco was sold to a French company, Suez, the Suez Canal. And at that point, I left because I couldn't speak French. So it comes around full circle. And I went to work for the Illinois Finance Authority. I didn't know anything about finance, but technical writing is technical writing, and I ended my career in a rather interesting political environment in Illinois at the time. So that's my short story.
Blagojevich was governor at the time. So
Yeah.
Right. And there I met Lynn Kessler's husband because he was a lawyer working on a case someplace and had a FOIA request that I had to work with him on, and it was interesting. But anyway, talk about being able to move around and different things in different places, but that's what Worcester teaches you how to do. That's my short story.
I have to just add that I think that's so interesting because first I thought I was going to be a music major when I went to Worcester. And then the second year, I thought, okay, I'm going to be a French major. And is that, Jeannie, when we went to Strasbourg?
Yeah, after our sophomore year.
Right. Well, and I came back from that and I said, everybody else talked about dreaming in French and stuff. I said, I was still translating everything. So then I went into speech and loved speech and language pathology. But again, I mean, where else would I have been able to sort of try out all these different things? So I think that's very interesting how that kind of works. But yeah.
It's also interesting how many stories are similar to, going on a job interview and taking your IS undergraduate to show the research and everything there is about that. I mean, typically they don't see things like that, depending on the school you go to, but even a master's thesis is not as sophisticated as what you crank out when you're an undergrad in Worcester. And that's something I don't think students appreciate until they're out for a little while, what you actually learned while you were there.
Well, I think also the defending, and I assume they still do that, but they certainly can present about their ISs very well. But I found defending for my master's, I wasn't worried about that at all because I'd already defended my IS, so, which was very unusual among my colleagues, when I was getting the master's. So yeah, there.
I got to do that 3 times for the IS, for my master's, and for my PhD. And by the PhD time, it's like, I know more than all of this except for my advisor. There's no problem.
Yeah.
If my advisor doesn't like it, I'm in trouble. But
yeah, that would be true.
But they're not going to let me up front unless I do know it. So thanks. On languages, I hated French when I was there, but recently I've gone back and I'm doing Duolingo on French and Spanish and Italian. I decided I'd learn all the Romance languages. Actually, I finished all the French courses and then started Spanish, which is a lot easier than French, let me tell you.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
And sorry, or maybe you're welcome.
No.
And things are pronounced like they're spelled, which is not true in French. French has all the faults of English in that regard. But it's, it keeps me busy. Spend a few hours every day working on those languages. And then of course, they upgraded the course in French. So now I have to go back and redo all of the stuff. So, okay.
Am I the only one in this program who did not fall in love with the IS process? Because
No.
I really hated it, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. And what I got from Worcester as I listened to some of you speak is, particularly as a person graduating 50 plus years ago, the recognition that you could study and learn across a lot of different disciplines and do things in all of them. So for me anyway, that meant a religion major turned into a junior high school math teacher, turned into a lawyer who didn't do what several of you have done and practiced law seriously. I ended up doing public policy for years with a law degree. So I think for me anyway, it wasn't the IS process. It was the ability to learn different things and be confident that you could learn different things.
I share your attitude. Of course, I was confronted with needing to do my junior and senior IS in 1 year while still taking a full load of everything else. And it was friggin' dreadful. I hated it, every minute of it. Got very little out of it. And the worst of all was I turned in my IS. I had actually hired a typist. She gave it to me the day before IS was due. I opened, and 3 pages in, I had already counted 20 some typos. Called her about it, and she said, I'm sorry, I had oral surgery and I was taking Darvon. Or went, okay. So I had no choice. I went to the advisor and I said, I know I have to turn this in, but I said, I can't let this be my submission. So I said, you keep 1 copy. If you'll give me permission, I will retype it. So I spent 3.5 days retyping my IS on my mother's 1929 Royal Portable in one of the lounges in the dorm, and just taught myself to type then, which is interesting. I had already learned it takes a minimum of 8 fingers to play bagpipes, which is why I didn't join the pipe band. And it really takes more than 7 to type an IS in 3 days, but I did it. But I have mentored kids thinking about career days, from high school career days, colleges, law students, and whatnot. And I have always said that two things are true. Liberal arts education is really a key to becoming lifelong curious learner. And the second thing was, a law degree is like a liberal arts degree. It's a wonderful thing to take with you. You've learned a different way of thinking, perhaps a different way of reasoning, but you can, with it, you can do anything you want. And, you know, the valedictorian of my law school class didn't even sit for the bar. She went immediately onto the law faculty and had a tremendously inspiring career. So, yeah. All right, we are up against the time.
We are indeed, and I see that Carolyn sent a chat out. She wanted to send along the full event schedule so we can join other events, and so she has done that on the chat. If you go look at that, or you can go to the alumni website, which also has it. And
unfortunately, the chat column disappears when the Zoom closes. Remember,
right?
It's captured, but
so if you don't copy it now, it is on the alumni website.
Okay, good.
And it will be there. So, and like Cindy said, we would definitely encourage you to participate in any of the things that you would like to. If you haven't been back to campus, I'm sure the campus tour would be fun to see. But tomorrow's alumni meeting is a definite that you should go to, and then tomorrow evening we will all get together again, and maybe we really can, besides just connecting and talking about whatever we would like, we can also think about some things that we might want to do next year in person.
Yeah.
What time is dinner?
What time is dinner?
Yeah, when your dinner meeting, yes.
Oh, it's not a dinner meeting, it's happy hour. Woo woo.
Yeah, it's
wow. Fun.
You're allowed to eat though.
Carolyn, what time is that?
I believe it's actually pretty late. 7:30 is what I think I have on here. Oh, give me 1 second here.
Hang on.
Yeah, 7:30.
Yep.
7:30.
Now, do we do the same thing? Go to this Zoom and that's it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. It'll be
Yeah, that's that link I just put in here for everyone. If you visit that site, which is just worcesteralumni.org/alumni weekend, they have all of the Zoom links listed. So if you need a cheat sheet, there it is.
Thank you.
And Steve, I'll put tomorrow's links on our Facebook page too, as active links.
Yeah, that's been very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Susan.
What time is the meeting tomorrow?
Okay, the class, okay, remember the luncheon for the annual meeting is 12 noon and it's only 1 hour. And then the evening is 7:30 until 9:15.
And all times cited are Eastern time.
They are.
Eastern
So
Daylight.
this can be a dinner meeting for the Worcesters. Since they've had everything at way off hours. I don't know how many of the others of you have, but I think the rest of us are a little bit closer than.
If I were still in Idaho, I would have been even worse than them because they have 2 hours. I had 3 hours.
Yeah, I was really wondering if that's maybe why we didn't get some of our West Coast alums here. It's
possible,
like weird times. So
yeah.
So next year
I'm sitting here in Worcester if you ever need a picture of anything.
Okay.
Thank you,
All
Steve.
right. We
Yeah.
will do that. And now I'm trying to think, who just moved there from our class?
Put that
Who did?
over.
I think Sally Zimmerman might be there. Sally Schmidt.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, sure. Oh, I'm the host now. Thanks.
You know what, Cindy? I'm so sorry. I actually have to hop on to my next meeting, so I will leave, but you can stay on if you all want to keep having a conversation because you're the host now. Sorry. It was great
Okay,
to
so
see everyone.
so the system isn't going to dump us automatically?
You shouldn't. I don't think you should get dumped. I think if you stay on as host, you should be good to go, but you might be surprised here in about 30 seconds, but I think you should be good. So.
Okay, well, we'll know what happens, and it's nothing I do.
Right. Sorry, thank you all.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Bye.
Yeah.
Hey.
I might mention too that Buzz and Linda Barbu are there in Worcester.
Right. Drew Kerr is also here with Mary Lou.
Hey, Steve, do you know anything about Ed Mickelson?
I do not.
I got the impression that he became a teacher, and that's just an impression. I'm not sure it's even true.
Ed Mickelson?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the name in the Worcester City School District, and since I was in there for 31 years, I know about everybody in the
Okay.
Yeah, but other districts perhaps.
Yeah.
I've got a son teaching in Hillsdale. I can ask him. And two of my kids, you were talking about IS earlier, Jessica and Scott, both went to the college. Jess had a marvelous IS experience. It vaulted her into, she's a forensic child psychologist in New England, and you might know her. She's Dr. Jessica on Married at First Sight, as well as the 7-Year Switch. She's got TV shows and you name it. She has a crazy world going on right now. So, but that's the kids that went through college, but they had a fabulous experience. They started out liberal, so they just stayed liberal. I started out conservative, and Worcester changed me to liberal. So that's just the way it is. Liberal arts, you know.
Yeah.
Steve, are you still in contact with Steve Larson?
I am indirectly. Steve actually, I know of Steve. Steve and Denise are in Delaware, and I can be in contact. The interesting part about Steve is has had quite a journey also. I recently connected with Taylor Huff of all folks. Another story, but Steve went from being the far left. I mean, we went to the Freedom Village together, you know. So it was that far. And he's actually gone libertarian far right. So go figure. That's the way things get polarized, I guess, in these days. So no, I think he's doing okay. Taylor Huff, who nobody thought would even survive beyond age 22, ended up being an attorney. Speaking of attorneys, all you guys talking. He's been a divorce attorney though in I want to say Tahoe or close to it, and has done quite well. So it's amazing. So that's pretty much what I know.
I'm wondering if in the happy hour we could talk about any surprises we have found out about our family since Worcester.
Oh, yeah.
My mother had a baby out of wedlock at age 19 that until she died, I never knew anything about. And I found out about this woman who died actually in 93 before I ever heard about her, from her daughter who contacted me on Facebook. So
that's a great idea.
If anybody else has stories like that came out long after anybody who knew about them had died.
Interesting topic
I might
to throw out.
Sure.
jump in here a little bit.
Yep, Don.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Show of hands. How many took the ancestry DNA? Well, thanks. I took it. My wife took it. We got contacted by a lady up in Waterloo, New York, that asked if I was a Jim Lowry related to Roger Dick, who was my first cousin, the son of my dad's older sister. He says, I think he's my father. And, you know, we checked out, he had worked in Waterloo, so nothing seemed out of line. And we basically, my kids said, call Roger and tell him he has a daughter. And I don't know about you, but I couldn't do it. What I did do is gave her the information to reach out to him. And she did, and he didn't see it, but his daughter did, and it made sense to her. And long story short is she verified that she was his daughter, and the two are 6 months apart in age. And he'd had a little fling right before he got married to his wife of 51 years. And they met 2 months before he died, which was a really cool thing. I went out there probably about 6 months later, you know, well, it wasn't 6 months, about 3 months later for his memorial service. And it was really cool to visit with the family having done that, and realized we had something to do with it, just because my wife has been doing a lot of work with ancestry on both sides, her family and my family. So you never know.
Hey, we have a person who just joined.
Whoa, hello.
Tim?
Tim,
You're muted?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim Horn.
Tim Horn? Hi.
Okay.
Okay, Tim who?
Horn.
Oh, gosh. Hi.
Well, we're glad to see you.
Yeah, we are running along. Our event, quote unquote, should have ended. We're glad you joined us. We've all been sharing stories about what we've done in our lives since Worcester. Why don't you feel free to share your story?
Well, also, I think Don tried to get in earlier, so.
Yeah.
Who tried to get in?
Don Kovacs.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Well, I could jump in here.
Sure.
yeah.
I did do the 23andMe, but the only surprise was I have more more DNA from the what was the caveman?
Neanderthals?
Neanderthal, yes, I put blocking on that word. I have more Neanderthal DNA than 95% of their people. So
whoa, whoa.
That was happy news.
Congratulations.
You know, one of the pluses of meeting on Zoom, and I do regret not being on campus, but you know, we've got to hear many more stories, I think, than I would have heard otherwise of what all you good people are doing with your lives and your education. One of the things I noted was how many people are affiliated with the Presbyterian Church, like good Worcester grads, and it made me think of something Dr. Gore said years ago I was in the Westminster Choir as well as the Worcester Chorus, but I think in the Westminster Choir we were rehearsing a piece, Dona Nobis Pacem, and he interrupted the rehearsal and sort of threw up his hands and said, "Oh, what does it all matter? We're going to blow ourselves up anyway, and we'll have to start all over again from an amoeba and work our way back up to a Presbyterian."
That sounds so much like him. You did a great job.
It really does. What year was that, Don? Was that freshman or was that sophomore
Probably
year?
freshman year, 67, 68.
I was
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I was there. Yeah.
I remember.
Oh, what does it all matter that
Yep.
the Red Chinese are going to take over and I'll be turned out to the rice paddies and they won't have any use for an organist. Yeah, he was quite a character.
I remember that freshman year when we were in choir, we were rehearsing for Brahms Requiem, German Requiem.
Yes.
And we only had one rehearsal with members of the Cleveland Orchestra.
Yeah.
And the one chorus where the basses come in first, okay? And of course we'd only, practiced with piano or organ or something before that. And it's the well, anyway, before that, I think there's some trumpets or something come in, which we'd never heard before. And so none of us came in, and then
Score goes, it's so awful.
Caruth was so much calmer.
Yeah.
Okay, Tim,
Yes, Tim.
tell
Yeah.
us.
Here, we interrupted you.
Sorry, Tim. Go.
So after Worcester, I taught, coached football, wrestling, and track for 14 years, and then went to law school, and I'm still practicing.
What kind of law?
Probate, estate planning, small business, and real estate.
Where are you, Tim?
I'm in Toledo.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Not so far. Is that where you've been?
Yes, born there and back again.
Oh, okay. That is great.
We lived in Oregon. Did you and I ever drive back and forth between Worcester and Toledo?
We may have our freshman year because
Okay.
Tom Boardman, who I played football with, he was lucky enough to have a car.
Okay.
So I think that you and I went back and forth one time,
Yeah.
right around Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about, I mean, all the people on the Worcester campus now, they have no idea about the buses that ran all the time, all the holidays. There were buses to Chicago and Washington, D.C. and New York City and
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I remember all of that. And then up to the airport, but not as many people flew, at least if they were from one of those cities. Yeah.
Students today will never know the experience of typing an IS on a typewriter.
Oh, true.
With
Yeah.
revising all those typos would have been easy as pie with the word processor.
I know, and we didn't even get the Tootsie Rolls that they get now.
No.
They don't have to type this, on the
Cindy,
typewriters.
Yeah.
tell them we want Tootsie Rolls when we're there.
Okay.
Oh,
that's easy.
We
That's a
get
good
our IS Tootsie Rolls.
All right, retroactive. All of us have
All-
degrees, so
all of
all
the
of us
cl-
did our IS.
All of the old classes that didn't get them should get them. A funny thing
Great
about,
idea.
a
Hey,
funny thing,
class communicator, please put that on the list.
I will do that. I will do that.
a funny thing about
You majored
IS
in
and
math, you didn't
typing
have
IS, my son majored in physics in the class of 2013. And the department pulled out my IS and showed it to him and the other students. They were very intrigued by the fact that I had to write in the equations in pen. I had typed in things like the plus symbols and the underlines and some of the other things, but there's no symbol for a row on a typewriter like of those days. So I had to do all of those in ink. And so it was a mixture of typing and ink for my things. It was on second sound and helium. But it was things, and then they put it in the physics bulletin newsletter and sent it out to all the old. Thanks.
Wow.
But,
Music ed majors such as I didn't have to do IS. We did our student teaching, and that was, I guess, considered IS. But my sister, Jean Asbury, class of 69, had IS for her English major. And our mom was an executive secretary, and Mom came down to Worcester the Friday before Jean's IS was due and spent the whole weekend typing Jean's IS for her so she could turn it in on Monday morning. So she had the IS experience that many of you had.
My mother, who was a fairly decent typist, had typed the doctoral dissertations of 3 Worcester people that we would know of. including Howard King, Dean of Men. But she absolutely refused to come down and help me out.
Oh.
Other than she says, you have my typewriter, while she's sitting with an IBM Selectric.
Oh. And you
I was the ungrateful child that week, I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I'll also tell one quick story about things coming out of professors' file cabinets. Steve, that's what I was also going to be a French major. And in fact, I think I'm technically undeclared because of that weird change of how our academic stuff changed freshman year to sophomore year to junior, which was my final year. So I technically have all the hours for a double major and a double minor. But my French major, of course, required that I take another language. So of course I signed up for German.
Oh, God.
But anyway, so I first day of class, I have Herr Dr. Schreiber, and I think it was after class, he pulled me aside. He says, your mother, she went here. Yes. Yeah. What was her name? I told her. He says, I thought so. He says, and why are you taking German? I said, because I'm going to be a French major, among other things. And he said, okay. He went to his file cabinet and he pulled out a final exam that he had kept for almost 40 years. My mother had, she was a geology major. And of course, she had also taken French as in high school. So she had to take the language that was the language of science back in the day, and that was German. He pulled out her final exam in German 101, and it was in French. My mother had a complete mental block. She had written her German final in French. He knew she needed the credit because she needed it for the degree. She enlisted Pauline Ehrig to grade my mother's exam in French. My mother got an A on her French, an F on her German, a C for the class, and passed. And he said, you will not write in French.
I have a Herr Schreiber story to tell.
Good.
I started out as a music major, and Caruth was my teacher that convinced me that maybe I shouldn't be a music major. So I ended up moving over to a geology major, Cindy, which is interesting. That didn't pan out very well. So junior year, I ended up being an English major. Along the way, I took the German requirement, had to take it for 2 semesters, and I was terrible. I could memorize the words, but I sure couldn't speak it. And that Dr. Schreiber took me aside at the end of second semester of this German. He said, Herr Griffin, I will give you a C if you do not take another German class. So I didn't. But what's funny is karma returns. All my children went to the College of Western Nursery School with his wife, Clara Dell. And he and I would play piano and he would do the harmonica with the kids at the nursery school. It was such a, he said, I remember you. I says, I remember you too. So it was just a really good feel after that. But what a story. Yeah, it was fun.
I started to learn German on the Duolingo and got to the declensions.
It's just, no.
There's the word the in things. Le, la, le in French, similar in Spanish and Italian, but in German, it's a 4x4 matrix filled in arbitrarily as near as I can tell. And some of them are not there.
And they put all the verbs at the end of the sentence. You have to remember the whole damn sentence before you get to the verb.
When
I
was
always
studying
refer to German as an engineered language
Yes, I'd be
When I
right.
was studying German,
because of how they built words in compounding into single words to get the nuance or the coloration inside the same word, inside the same noun.
Yeah.
my German teacher in Vienna said that to remember which word was used for the in German, remember that things that are good are masculine and therefore they're der something. The things that are okay but not so good, they're neutral. So it's das. Things that are really kind of crummy are feminine, and so it's die, whatever it was.
Whoa.
No, he gave the example because so it's der Wein, it's das Bier, and it's die Milch.
Not sure that'd play very long in these days.
Oh, it sure would. It didn't really play very well then either.
But what is it for the different declensions? That's just the present, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't give us any rules to follow on that.
Well, for me, languages were easy because the elementary school I started as a 5-year-old in Akron, private school, began conversational French in first grade. So I actually, taking SAT achievement tests and whatnot, I started with 12 semester hours credit for my French once before I got to Worcester. So it was easy for me. And they say that, like music, learning a foreign language early lays down the durable neural pathways that are actually base ones that why people who are deep into Alzheimer's and are otherwise nonverbal can all of a sudden sing lyrics to songs that they haven't heard for 30, 40, 50 years.
I've been watching one of these great courses, and the McWhorter talks about learning the language before you're 8. You need to learn it as a child to be really fluent in it.
To really learn to speak it without an accent.
Yes.
You have to learn it even younger, under 5.
Either that or you do what I ended up doing, which is having people who were my French teachers or instructors or professors who were from 10 different countries and accent patterns to begin with. So I just, strangely enough, naturally steered between them. So when I go to France and I try not to speak English when I'm there, nobody thinks I'm American. They have no idea where I'm from, but they obviously know I'm not American. Which is fine.
Yeah. Oh, well, this has been great.
Yeah.
I really think that I hope to see everybody tomorrow. I think both the annual meeting and then our, what's it called? Happy hour, whatever.
Happy hour.
Class happy hours.
Class happy hours. Thank you. Will be really good. And like I said, feel free to join into any of the other things that are going on as well.
Oh yeah, please do. All right, well, I'm gonna let you guys sign out, because if I hit the end button, you all disappear, kaboom. So enjoy the rest of your day, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.